I fully expect the Jacksonville Jaguars to stand pat at least until after the draft starts. I'll tell you why I think that in just a second here on Locked On.
You are Locked On Jaguars, your daily Jacksonville Jaguars podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yo, what's up? Tony Wiggins here, the host of the Locked On Jaguars podcast, where it's your team every day. We thank you for making us your first listen. We are free to subscribe to on our YouTube page. Just head over to Locked On Jaguars. Make sure you hit the like and subscribe buttons along with the bell so you get notifications each and every time we drop an episode. And then if you listen to audio podcasts, wherever you do that, make sure you tap into that location every single day so you don't miss an episode of Locked On Jaguars. Today's episode is brought to you by Monopoly Go. I admit it, I have a competitive side, and I'm a big fan of Monopoly Go, the mobile hit twist on classic Monopoly. So just join your friends and download Monopoly Go now, free on the App Store or Google Play. Let me clear my throat like DJ Cool. He actually went, Well, if y'all know music. So today they had the Jaguars Luncheon. But by the way, shout out to the everydayers. You can be one too. All you got to do is just join us every single day. I know y'all are anxious to hear. I got phone calls and texts. Everybody was like, we're going at Trent's neck. No, I did not go at Trent Baalke's neck. I asked 3 very, very professional questions that Trent answered. And got to give y'all the Wig and Trent update. There's a non-story. Trent walked past, stopped, said, "What's up, man?" Gave me a little fist bump, kept moving. Me and Doug exchanged pleasantries. Guys hadn't seen me in a while, really, because I've been away and nursing my way back to health the last couple of times that they've actually met with the media. But good luncheon today, a pre-draft luncheon where if you thought I was going to come over here and say I went to the pre-draft luncheon and they told me who they were going to pick, then I'd have some swampland to say, because that did not happen. So I won't even set you up like that. But if you listen closely, and the video is on the Jaguars.com or the Jaguars YouTube page, you can go check that out for yourself. I'm not going to sit here for the next 28 minutes and repeat everything that was already said and things that you can go and find for yourself. But I will tell you that I did learn some things. I learned Baalke's point of view or his perspective on picking need versus best player available. And listening to his answers to those questions, I got a little bit more clarity. I'll discuss that. Segment 2, it appears that there are no trades before the draft night. Trent says it doesn't make sense to do that. And I totally agree with him. You do not make a trade unless you're going to the number one spot. You know exactly who you're going to get. I kind of disagree with that part a little bit, because I think if Minnesota makes a trade up to the top 3, they have an idea of who they're going to get. You don't have to know the exact player, but I think they know where they need to be. But for him, sitting at 17, man, you might sit there and get the dude you want. So you got to wait until everything looks and shows you what it looks like. We'll go over that because I absolutely agree with it. Moving on up, are the Jaguars thinking about moving up? A couple of times in his discussion, Trent Baalke mentioned the fact, and he mentioned the 12 and 13 area. If we think you got to go up to 12 and 13. So I'll give you what my opinion says about that. So let's not bury the lead. Let's get down to it. A need versus best player available. Trent Baalke basically said this: there won't be a huge need, and this is a paraphrase, but this is what I got out of his answers today. There won't be a huge gap where you're picking between the biggest need position you have and the best player available. If you have 2 players, one of them is at the higher priority of need, but the other player is better, Trent wants to know how much better. How much better does that person have to be for you to avoid need, for you to avoid taking the best player and taking a player for need? Which I think is one of the smartest things I've ever heard Trent Baalke say. And I know y'all going to say, well, just because he spoke to you, you're going to start being nice. No, I started that yesterday. Maybe even a few days before that, I started being nice to Trent Baalke. Because I don't think anybody is inherently bad at everything. And even if they're not good at something, they're not bad at it all the time, right? Even if you don't like my podcast, you got to admit, if you don't think I'm good at it, I can get it. You know, a lot of people don't like me who not married to me or related to me, and that's fine. But even if you feel that way, I do have my day, right? Like a broke clock is right twice a day. I do have a moment or two in time where you're like, well, that was pretty good. And I know I have those moments because I even say it to myself. Y'all don't see me say it. I think it, and then I pause it. And then when one of my graphics is playing, I toot my own horn a little bit. I say, you brought it then, man. So, even if you think I'm terrible, I'm not terrible all the time. And I don't think Trent Baalke is terrible. And I don't think, I think I said he was in the past. So I might contradict myself. I don't think he's terrible. I think when I say that, it's hyperbole. I'm trying to hammer a point home real hard. I don't think he's terrible. If you're a GM in the league and you win 9 games 2 years in a row, you're not terrible. You're not terrible. I thought in the past he's had sort of a messaging problem, but if you see my thumbnail today, you'll notice him and Doug sitting up there. They look like two sailors on weekend pass with a pocket full of money in a place where a pocket full of money serves you well. They were sitting up there laughing like two little kids. Like you ever watch the Muppets? You see those two dudes that sit up in the balcony, those judges, and all they do is just sit there and laugh at everybody. It's almost like that's how they were today. And it was a pleasure for me to see them that way. That means that those guys are a little bit secure in their position right now. They like what they've done. They like their team. You don't see worry in their face. You don't see a whole bunch of concern that if we don't get this right, we're going to get fired. You don't see that. And I think by being so relaxed is going to help them do their job, and they're going to pick the best player for the team, at least in the first round. But he made a great point. He made a great point, and that's going to lead us into segment 2 in a minute when he says, don't be trading before the draft. What you doing that for unless you're going to number 1? Why would you trade before the draft starts? Says if you're going to move, you probably wouldn't move until after the draft got going, and then some of the picks start going, and then you get to pick 11 or 12 or something like that, and then you start seeing where you are, and you have preliminary phone calls to try to find out from people, what it would take to move up if certain things happen. But yeah, they're real clear. If it comes down to best player available in need, and there's no big gap, and the gap isn't very big between the rankings of the players, they're going to draft a player who fits the need. That's smart. If they're sitting there at 17 and somebody who is not even supposed to be in the neighborhood of pick 17 based on their board, what if they have, let me just give you an example. What if they have Troy Fautanu ranked as number 10 on their board and he falls to 17 because of the way the board falls? Maybe there's a run on DBs. There's all 4 of those quarterbacks go. Maybe a 5th quarterback goes in the early teens and Michael Penix or something like that. There's a run on a couple of DBs. Brian Thomas III gets taken, and then somebody does fall in love with a defensive tackle. I'm hearing there's the kid from Texas that and I've been on record saying that he's not like my favorite prospect, but if somebody likes him, that's fine. And he goes off, and then Brock Bowers goes, and then you're looking up, and I think Rick Ballou brought this point up today. With all those quarterbacks going and the run on the receivers and maybe a tight end and some offensive linemen, if the Jaguars want to go defense, there's a chance that there'll only be 2 or 3 defensive players already moved off the board. They could get like the 4th best defensive player in the draft. And that question was brought up. So if something like that happens and Troy Fautanu is sitting there, or Talisi Fuaga, whoever it is, and they didn't necessarily want to address the offensive line, but they're sitting there at 17 and they got a guy that's like number 10 on their board, then you got to start looking at yourself going, damn, can we go ahead and just do this now? Because hopefully they won't be picking 17th next year, and they won't get a player that good at 17 in a year where they will need an eventual replacement for Cam Robinson and Walker Little. You can move Anton Harrison over to left tackle and make whoever you pick, they can play right tackle. And you get that process started right now. That's the difference. If he's ranked significantly higher than the guys at the other spots. If you're looking at offensive lineman 3 or offensive lineman 4 versus cornerback 4, wide receiver 5, what are you going to do? And I think this is a part of what we consider a dilemma. But according to Trent Baalke and Doug Pederson, ain't no dilemma. They know exactly what they'll do. If the players are almost equal, you go for need. If there's a big gap between the best player available and your need position, you just take the best guy. And I 100% agree with that. I'm going to tell you why I think there's no trades before the draft and why I really believe there probably won't be any trades at all from the 17th pick with Jacksonville, unless it's a move that is very minimal, like one or two players going backwards. I'm going to tell you about all of that stuff here in a second on Locked On Jaguars as we head to segment number 2 in just a second. Got to let you know today's show is brought to you by Monopoly Go. That's right, Monopoly Go. Let me tell you something, man. I love that Monopoly game from when I was a kid and the competitiveness. We used to play it when I was in the military. I've been told that I'm ultra competitive, too competitive. Locked On Jaguars, do you think that's true? Okay, well, yeah, I have a competitive side. We all do. And my competitive side is a big fan of Monopoly Go. I'm sure you've heard of it. It's been downloaded over 150 million times. It's a great twist on Monopoly where you play on not one, but hundreds of Monopoly boards in crazy locations, building up amazing cities that bring you big money. Best part is messing around with my family and friends, especially on holidays and birthdays. I can charge them rent on my iconic properties just like classic Monopoly, but now I can also heist their vaults of riches for myself. But it's not just my competitive side that loves it. You can team up with friends and people around the world, all around the world, in time tournaments to earn huge rewards. So get in the game and join your friends. Download Monopoly Go now free on the App Store or Google Play. Segment 2 here on Locked On Jaguars, where it's your team every day. We always thank you for making us your first listen. I am of the belief that there will be no trades for the Jaguars. I am really of the belief that there will definitely not be a trade prior to the draft. Doesn't sound like they're going to move off the 17th pick for a veteran receiver at all. It also doesn't sound like they're going to work any trades with any team prior to selections being made next week. I think that's a good move also. So we're forming a habit here now of me agreeing with things that Trent Baalke says about the process. But really what it is, I hope it's showing just a sign of maturity that no matter how much I criticize someone, no matter how much I say how incompetent they've been, and when you're taking that macro approach instead of taking a micro approach, when you look at a micro approach, the guy is not a terrible dude at all. And he also has not done he hasn't been anywhere near the worst GM I've ever seen. And I think what you've seen from him is a little bit of a change in how he messages stuff. Trent used to come across to me as the type of dude that, I know what I'm doing. I've been doing this a long time. None of y'all don't know what you're talking about. You're just here to cover it. It kind of came across that way, even though I'm not going to tell you he's ever said anything that I just told you. I am not going to sit here and tell you that I believe that Trent Baalke has ever said anything to quote those words. That is just the feeling that you kind of always get from him when you hear his press conferences. And they've been a little bit better as of late. And I think humble pie will do that to you. Humble pie will make you understand that people are just doing their jobs and they just want answers. He said something again today that he wasn't going to look back in the 2021 draft. And it almost made me understand why he won't do that, especially right now at this time. Doug Pederson said something that was very, very interesting. Doug Pederson said, this process is every day for us, especially the Trent in the personnel department. And you go 364 days a year, and all your work, you're constantly second guessed. And if you get it wrong, you can't get too many of them wrong, is what Doug said. And the thing that he said that made a lot of sense was, basically, they ain't trying to be wrong. They're trying to do right, and they're trying to get the right players. It just doesn't work out sometimes. And that's kind of the way I want to look at it a little bit. That they're not trying to be wrong, they're trying to get right. And that's why there's one of the reasons I wouldn't have any trades before the draft. Because something that I have repeated over and over again on my show, and I told someone else today, I'm not about drafting positions. I'm about drafting players and people. They don't put positions in the Hall of Fame. They put players and people in the Hall of Fame. No matter what position you are, if you're a baller and a player, ain't nobody going to complain down the road when you're playing well. In fact, if more of those guys start playing well beyond the first round picks, folks will start trusting Trent Baalke and believing every single pick that he makes is going to be a good one, because that's what people do. So this is not more or less about the way we cover it or the way that you feel about Baalke. It's more or less about making sure you hold people accountable. Like, you can't sit here and act like they've been drafting well beyond the first round when they haven't. They haven't. And that's a part of it. I was talking to JP Shadrick today, and I said, every time somebody talks to me about Trent Baalke and they make an excuse like, well, we want him to trade all those picks because he doesn't do good with day 3 picks. That's a problem for me. That's like you're dancing around the grind. A part of the grind is being able to do well on those third-day picks. And if you're dancing around that, and then you're looking at the tight end position, Evan Ingram doesn't eat up the middle of the field. And JP said something to me like, maybe that's why they don't throw those types of balls, because Trevor didn't have the protection, and maybe that's not Evan's strength. And maybe, yeah, see how you're working around another shorthanded situation. And everything that this team seems to do at some point always revolves around something that they can't do. And the easiest thing is to find a way to get along and to figure out how to get the job done without not being able to do one thing, as opposed to doing the harder thing, which is find people that know how to do those things so you don't have to dance around them in the first place. Making a trade, in my opinion, before the draft starts says that you are interested in being put in a certain area where prospects are going to be without one iota of an understanding of who is actually going to be there. And I don't think the Jaguars are in a position that they have to do that. They're one win against Tennessee away from picking 23rd and being a playoff team 2 years in a row. And the thing about that is no one will be wanting them to move up. They will want them to sit right there and let a good player fall to them. There seems to be a little bit more desperation to make a move and go up and get a big-time receiver, because the reason why it seems like there's just momentum for them to do that is because of how bad the season ended last year and how folks don't want that taste in their mouth anymore. So if they were going to move up, they would have to be targeting certain people. I'm going to give you 3 names, since Trent Baalke did mention an area, pick 11, 12, or 13, or 14, or something like that. I'm going to give you an idea of who they probably feel if we wait to 17, they're not going to be here. This is exactly what I'm going to do. After I let you know that if you are tired of watching Fox Sports and ESPN on your TV all day, hearing those people yell and scream, even when you mute the TV, you still hear them yelling and screaming, make the switch to Locked On Sports Today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel program for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming and yelling. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So we're going to run down here in segment number 3. We're going to run down some people who are candidates that the Jaguars may move up for. A couple of those names might actually surprise you. We'll see if they do in just a second here on Locked On Jaguars. Got to let you know about today's sponsor, which is Yahoo Finance. That's right. Yahoo Finance is the sponsor of today's show. You've been using Yahoo Finance. That's our sponsor. This couldn't exist without the help of sponsors like Yahoo Finance. Would it be great if you could see all of your investment and retirement accounts in one place? Just one. With Yahoo Finance, you can consolidate your views from multiple accounts into one hub and access the expert analysis you need to tend to your entire portfolio with confidence. I have seen it times where you had to go to one computer and have another computer ready and going back and forth. Well, guess what? With Yahoo, you get to consolidate them in one place, which has made it incredibly easy to manage them. Let's get straight to the point. You want to grow your portfolio to deal with the rising cost of inflation, to pay off your debt or your mortgage. Pretty much anything standing in the way of you and your financial freedom, right? With Yahoo Finance, you can get access to the news, data, and tools that you need in order to help reach that financial freedom. And for more than 25 years, Yahoo Finance has been the brand behind every great investor. With a community of over 90 million users each month, their real strength is helping you on your way to financial success. For comprehensive financial news and analysis, visit the brand behind every great investor, yahoofinance.com. The number one financial destination, yahoofinance.com. That's yahoofinance.com. Third and final segment here on Locked On Jaguars, where it's your team every day. We always thank you for making us your first listen. I'm Tony Wiggins, the host of the Locked On Jaguars podcast, talking about my takeaways from the luncheon today that we had pre-draft with the Jaguars brass. Trent Baalke as well as Doug Pederson. There's some good food over there today, too. I ain't gonna lie to you. I was probably hungry because I've been on this diet, but it was really, really good. I've seen some people mess up pork chops before. They didn't. They were tender. So shout out to whoever made that food over there today. And shout out to Amanda and the entire Jaguars PR crew, my man Jacob LaMotta. They're always so gracious over there. Everybody asked me how my health and my hip was doing. So shout out to them for that too. The mood just seemed extremely relaxed today. It seems extremely confident in their ability. It looked like people who've done their homework. You know, when you've done your homework and you ain't got no excuses and the dog didn't eat it and you didn't spill peanut butter and jelly on it. When your homework is in a document protector and you know it's right because your mama or your daddy helped you do it, and you skip into that school bus, baby, because you know you're gonna slap that on that teacher's desk, she's gonna put an A on it. That's the way they look today. They looked absolutely like they are ready to go because they know they're gonna have a good player come next Thursday. I don't think they're gonna move. I think they're gonna stay right where they are. They're gonna wait until the draft to decide if they need to go up for some people. If they decided that they were gonna move up, I'm gonna take a stab at who it's gonna be for. I think it would be for the fourth receiver. Trent talked about the fact that those three receivers deserve all of the credit that they're getting. The guys at the top of the draft, Marvin Harrison Jr., Malik Neighbors, and Rome Odunze. Rightfully so. I don't think he expects him to be there past number 9. That's why when he constantly kept talking about moving up, he was talking about 11, 12, 13 area. I think that means that they might be targeting one of those cornerbacks, and I think it's Quinyon Mitchell. If it's not him, they may feel that Brian Thomas Jr., the other receiver that they might really, really like, that he might not make it to him at 17. And I think those are the two guys that they would probably say we need to go up there and get them if the draft falls a certain way. I don't necessarily believe that they're sitting there thinking that about a right tackle. I don't. I think Trent made a comment today that well into the 4th and 5th round, you'll see offensive linemen, interior and outside guys, pressing for starting positions on their respective teams. So I believe that he thinks that that is a deep enough area that they can wait until day 3 to address it. Even though he said that there was a bunch of wide receivers. So he said the offensive line was loaded, basically said the wide receivers and the corners were also loaded. It could possibly also mean that if one defensive tackle goes, that they could be concerned that defensive tackle 2 could be going, and defensive tackle 2. They are sitting right in that area. It's a sweet spot, and I told you where the Jaguars are. Now, I wouldn't put it past them to move back a couple of spots, but not way back, just a couple of spots, get an extra third because they want to get more darts. Trent says the analytics department always says you never move up. It's never worth it. You always move back to get more darts, he says, to throw. That's more picks, more bites at the apple, especially in a draft that's pretty deep. I have said before that if I could move back and up simultaneously, that's exactly what I would do. I would move back to accumulate picks and then take some of the picks on the back end and maybe one of the middle picks and move up. I would like to have 3 selections in that spot between 48 and 90. Because I think that's the meat of this draft when you talk about maybe not ranked as high as those early guys, but guys that are pretty damn good, right? And they're really good if you get a whole bunch of them. Like they're good if you get one guy per round, but they're really, really good if between round 2 and round 4 you end up with 4 people. That's a heck of a haul, especially in this year's draft where I think they're going to be starters all the way into day 3. So who could they move up to target? Maybe the number 1 corner on the board. I don't think it's going to be Brock Bowers. I don't think it'll be an offensive tackle unless it's somebody that they really don't expect to be there. Maybe like J.C. Latham. If he gets to 12, they're like, he's too good a player to pass up. He's the second best lineman. Well, we got to have him. You know, I can understand if they did it. And if they did that, that dude won't score touchdowns or any of that stuff. And you might not appreciate an offensive lineman the first year or immediately, but you'll appreciate him in the long haul when you look at the big picture for the Jaguars, because that'll give them 2 bookend tackles. If they got a corner in the second round, that gives them, and they re-signed Tyson Campbell, that gives them 2 bookend corners. They already have 2 bookend edge rushers. And then if they come back and are able to address the receiver position, that gives them a complete wide receiver room for at least the next 2 years. So what you'll start to see is this team really, really shape up to the point where they don't have a whole bunch of holes. You'll also notice that elevation thing that I've often used as an analogy, I've talked about this football team being like a house, like you establish a foundation, but eventually if you're building a new house, you want to go by and you want to see a frame start to going up. And once the frame goes up, you want to see the trusses in the roof put on the ceiling, right? And then after that, what you want to start seeing some drywall with some windows. So you start seeing elevation, you start seeing an erect structure. And I think the Jaguars are very, very close. And this is not saying that they're going to win anything. This is not saying they're going to win the Super Bowl. This is not saying that I won't come on here and criticize Trent Baalke. But from their perspective, I believe that they have a chance this year to say, there's our house. You like it? And then we all get to say whether we like it or not. But at least it's a standing, or if it's a house, it's a whole standing building, right? At least get to that point instead of constantly rebuilding and starting over. So very interesting. I think they stand pat or move back. Maybe if Pittsburgh wants to come up from 20, yeah, give us a 3rd round pick and you can come up from 20 to come up to 17 and jump in front of us and jump in front of Cincinnati, who probably wants the same thing. They're looking for offensive linemen and DBs, right? Okay, come on, Pittsburgh. You can come on up. We can get our guy at 20, but we're going to let you jump in front of that team in Cincinnati. That's your rival. You got to send us the 3rd round pick. I'd love it. And then still get your guy. He admitted that they moved down twice and Anton Harrison was their guy and they still got him. That's a dangerous game to play. But if there's a whole bunch of guys that you have lumped together and you feel like going back 3 spots ain't going to hurt you, you're going to get one of them. You don't care who somebody else takes. It doesn't matter. Then guess what? Then you do it and you get that extra additional pick and you make that do what it does. All right, we got more coming all week. As we get closer and closer to the draft, maybe start to get some more information. We'll make sure we pass that along to you. It's getting close to the weekend, but stuff is going to start happening fast and furious. So I made arrangements today for me to be on site when they make their pick. I will immediately go online and give a report from the stadium in the work area once the pick is made. And then we'll probably do a postcast either at that moment or right thereafter once I get back to my office. So I'll let you guys know. Until then, man, hang tight. We got a lot to do. Do your mock drafts this week. Do them with a trade back to like 20 and see who you get and who you end up with and then who you get with that extra pick. And make sure you send that to me on social media so I can check it out. Until then, you guys take care of yourself. We'll see you next time here on Locked On Jaguars.